The law of assumption's secret nobody told you. Neville Goddard taught that the life you keep attracting is only ever a mirror of the self you secretly believe yourself to be. There is a verse tucked into the Gospel of Mark that Neville Goddard turned to again and again, and it reads, "What things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them." This is Mark chapter 11, verse 24. And Neville would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? The order is not desire, then wait, then receive. The order is desire, then believe you have received. Then and only then does the outer world catch up." Most of us have lived the verse backwards our whole lives. We ask, then we watch, then we wait for proof before we allow ourselves to believe. And that waiting for proof is the very thing that keeps the desire forever out of reach. Because the believing was never meant to follow the evidence. The believing was meant to produce it. So before we go further, let's plant something true in you right now. Say it with me. I am the one my heart has been waiting for. I am already home in the wish fulfilled. Imagination creates my reality. Again, I am the one my heart has been waiting for. I am already home in the wish fulfilled. Imagination creates my reality. If those words landed anywhere in you, type the words "it's done" in the comments right now. Not as a hope, but as a seal. Let it be the quiet click of a door closing behind you on the old story. The first key is this: seeing is not believing. Believing is seeing. You have been taught your whole life to trust your eyes first and your imagination second. But Neville Goddard taught that this is exactly backwards. Imagination is the parent, and the visible world is only the child. The child cannot arrive before the parent, no matter how long you stand at the window watching for it, so nobody told you that the very evidence you are waiting for is waiting on you, and not the other way around. Think of a woman checking her bank balance every morning, hoping the number will finally give her permission to feel abundant. She refreshes the app, she sees the same figure, she sighs, and she calls this being realistic, but she has it upside down. The number on the screen is not the cause of her feeling, it is the faithful photograph of a feeling she has already been assuming underneath. A photograph cannot argue with the room it was taken in, it can only report it. So if she wants a new number, she does not need a new circumstance first. She needs a new assumption first. And until that assumption changes, she could refresh that app 1,000 mornings and only ever meet the same tired figure dressed up in a different date. Now think of a man standing in front of the mirror before an interview, straightening his collar, hoping his reflection will hand him some courage he does not yet feel. But the mirror has never once originated a feeling in its life. It only returns what is already offered to it. So he is asking the glass to give him what only his own imagination was ever able to give. This is the pattern almost everyone lives inside without ever noticing it. We treat the outer world as the witness stand where the verdict gets decided, when the verdict was actually handed down quietly in imagination, long before the world was ever called to testify. So try this today. Pick one small desire, something modest and near at hand, and instead of waiting to see it before you believe it, choose to believe it is already yours, and watch what happens to your mood in the next 5 minutes. Notice how the believing itself feels different in the body. Lighter, warmer, settled, as though a weight you did not even know you were carrying has been quietly set down. That feeling is not decoration, it is the actual substance Neville pointed to when he said, "Imagination is God." It is the unseen fact taking on flesh. This is the secret nobody told you plainly, that the world you see was assumed before it was seen, not the other way around. So stop studying the evidence for clues about what to believe, and start assuming the state you want to see. Then let the evidence come find you, because it will. It always does. It has no choice. It never had a choice. It was only ever waiting to be told what to become. I am the one who believes before I see. The second key is this: feeling is the secret, not effort, not affirmation repeated through gritted teeth, but feeling. Neville Goddard taught that you must assume the feeling of the wish already fulfilled, not the thought of it, not the hope of it, the feeling of it. And this distinction is where almost everyone quietly goes wrong. Because the mind is clever, it can arrange the correct words in the correct order and still leave the body untouched. And an untouched body means an unconvinced imagination. So let's slow down and really look at what feeling means here. Picture a man waiting to hear back about a job he desperately wants. He spends the whole week rehearsing the phone call in his mind. Over and over, he imagines the recruiter saying no, and he calls this preparing himself for disappointment. But what he is actually doing is praying for the very outcome he fears. Because imagination does not know the difference between rehearsal and reality. It only knows the feeling you keep feeding it. Morning after morning he wakes, and before his eyes are even open, his stomach has already tightened around the imagined no. He carries that tightness through his coffee, through his commute, through the small talk with his wife. And he never once notices that he has been holding a funeral for a job that has not even been decided yet. This is the ordinary tragedy Neville pointed to again and again. Not that people fail to try hard enough, but that they succeed, brilliantly, at feeling the very thing they do not want. Now picture him differently. Imagine instead he lies down for a few quiet minutes each night. And instead of replaying the fear, he feels the relief of the call already having come. He feels his shoulders drop the way they would if the good news were already true. He lets himself smile the small private smile of a man whose problem is already solved. He does not say the words, "I have the job." He simply lets his chest loosen the way it loosens when a burden has genuinely lifted. That loosening, that private and almost embarrassed relief, is the actual prayer. And here is the part that separates this teaching from mere positive thinking. Words are cheap. The mind can say, "I have the job," while the body still braces for rejection at the very same moment. But you cannot fake the feeling of relief. Either you feel it or you do not. The body always tells the truth even when the mouth is reciting something hopeful. So the discipline is not to arrange the words correctly. The discipline is to arrange the feeling honestly. Ask yourself in this ordinary moment, how would I feel if this were already handled? Not what would I say, but how would I feel? Would my breathing change? Would my jaw unclench? Would I stop checking my phone every few minutes for news? Then feel that right where you sit. Let your face soften the way it would if the wish were already fulfilled. Let your hands unclench. Let your shoulders drop half an inch. Hold it for as long as you can without straining. And if it slips, simply return to it gently. This is not pretending, and it is not performance for an audience of none. It is remembering a truth that has not yet appeared in the world of shadows, but is already finished within, finished the way a letter is finished, the moment it is sealed, even though it has not yet arrived in the other person's hands. I am not asking to receive. I feel as though I already have. The third key is this: everyone around you is you pushed out. Neville Goddard taught that the people who populate your life are not separate beings acting on their own independent script. They are mirrors. They are your own assumptions given a face and a name and sent back to you for inspection. And this is not a small metaphor to nod at politely and forget by lunchtime. It is meant to unseat the whole way you have been walking through your days. Because the moment you truly receive it, you can no longer blame the mirror for the face it shows you. You can only ask what state you were standing in when you looked. This sounds strange, until you test it against your own hours. So let's test it. Let's walk through an ordinary Tuesday, the way most people actually live it, without ever noticing they are living it twice. First inside, then outside. You wake, and before your feet touch the floor, you check your phone, and there is a message from someone you have quietly decided is difficult, and your stomach tightens before a single word has even happened between you today. By 8 in the morning, you have already rehearsed the argument you expect to have with them later, complete with their tone, their excuse, your clever reply. By 10, you pass a coworker in the hallway, and because your inner state is braced for conflict, you read a coolness into their nod that was never actually there. They were only thinking about their own lunch. By noon, you eat alone, rehearsing old grievances, instead of tasting your food. By 3, the difficult person finally calls. And of course, they are difficult, exactly as rehearsed. right down to the tone you had already assigned them at 7 that morning. And by evening you tell your family that people are impossible, and you believe with your whole chest that you have simply reported the facts of your day. But Neville would ask you gently, whose day was that? Because every encounter matched, almost eerily, the private conversation you were already carrying before your feet ever touched the floor. The world did not ambush you today, it obeyed you. And here is what makes this key so easy to miss. It does not only work on the people you dislike, it works just as faithfully on the people you love. The parent you have quietly cast as forgetful, the partner you have quietly cast as distracted, the child you have quietly cast as difficult at bedtime. You are not describing them, you are casting them, night after night, in a play you wrote long before they walked on stage. And they, being tender and impressionable the way all of us are, tend to grow into the part. So pause for a moment and pick one real relationship in your life right now that feels strained. Someone you have quietly written a difficult script for without ever calling it a script, and ask yourself honestly what conversation you have been having about them in your own mind when they are not even in the room. That inner conversation is the seed, and the outer relationship, the phone calls, the silences, the small frictions, is only ever the harvest. If you want the harvest to change, you do not need to confront the person, you do not need to explain yourself or wait for them to go first. You need to quietly change the conversation you keep having about them in private. Sit with them differently in your imagination. Tonight, hear them speak to you kindly. Feel the plain relief of ease between you. Nothing dramatic, just warmth where there was bracing. Do this quietly and consistently, and watch how the very same person begins to meet you differently without a single word being said to them directly. This is not manipulation of another soul, and it never was. It is correction of your own state, because they were never really the author of your discomfort. Your assumption about them was, the mirror was only ever doing its faithful work. And once the assumption changes, the mirror has no choice but to The fourth key is this. Revision is how you close the door on a day that tried to convince you of the wrong story. Neville Goddard taught that no event is final until you accept it as final. And this one teaching alone, if you actually lived it, would quietly rewrite the shape of your whole life. Because most people treat the day as though it were carved into stone the moment it happens, they say what's done is done, and they say it with a kind of grim pride, as though accepting the sting of a moment were the same thing as being strong. But Neville taught that this is not strength, it is simply forgetting that you were ever the author of the scene in the first place. The argument you had this afternoon, the sharp comment a coworker made, the way your own voice sounded small and apologetic in a meeting, none of it is fixed the way memory pretends. Memory is not a courtroom record. Memory is clay, and it stays soft far longer than you have ever been told. Think of a man who comes home replaying a moment from earlier in the day. His manager passed him in the hallway and barely nodded, and by dinner he has built an entire story on top of that nod. He tells his wife his manager is losing confidence in him. He tells himself he is probably about to be quietly replaced. He carries this story through the evening the way you'd carry a stone in your shoe, limping slightly, blaming the shoe, never once questioning whether the stone needs to be there at all. And here is what Neville would ask him gently. Are you certain that is what happened, or is that simply the version you accepted without revising it? Because the nod itself was silent. It said nothing. It was neutral clay, and he was the one who pressed a shape into it before he had even taken off his coat. So instead, before sleep, he could have gone back to that hallway in imagination, and this time let the manager smile, let the manager pause and say something warm, let his own shoulders stay loose instead of bracing. And this is not lying to himself, and it is not pretending something happened that did not happen. It is correcting the impression the moment left inside him. Because the outer event is already gone, it cannot be touched. But the inner impression is still alive, still shaping tomorrow, still humming quietly under the surface of his mood. And that impression is the only thing revision was ever aimed at. Think of revision as tidying the house of your mind before you lock the door for the night. You would not leave dishes piled in the sink and call it acceptance. You clean up, you set the room right before you rest. So do the same with your day. Take the scene that stung, whatever size it was, and replay it gently, not with force, not with a clenched jaw insisting it be different, but the way you would rewrite a letter you did not mean to send, softening a line here, correcting a tone there, until the whole page reads the way you actually wanted it to read. Feel your own voice come out steady this time where it once came out small. Feel the conversation end in ease where it once ended in tension, and notice, as you do this, that your body begins to unclench around the memory. That is how you know the revision has taken, not because you have convinced your mind with clever reasoning, but because your body has finally exhaled. Do this every night for a week, just one scene a night, the one that stung the most, and watch how differently your mornings begin to arrive, because the state you fall asleep in is the state that grows overnight into your tomorrow. The mind does not wake up neutral. It wakes up carrying whatever you handed it at the door. So hand it something healed instead of something raw. I revise my day gently, and my tomorrow rises out of that revision. If this quiet teaching found you tonight, subscribe so the next key reaches you. It takes a moment, and it may save you years. The fifth key is this, and it is the deepest one, so let's take it slowly, in 3 movements. First, consider the state akin to sleep. Neville Goddard taught that there is a particular condition of the mind, drowsy, loose, free from the tension of the wide-awake world, where the imagination becomes almost unbearably productive. He called it the state akin to sleep, not sleep itself, but the doorway just before it. The place where your critical faculty, the part of you that argues and doubts and demands proof, has finally let go its grip. Think of the last few minutes before you drift off at night, how thoughts arrive without your fighting them, how a passing image can feel more real than the room around you. That drowsy threshold is not empty time to be rushed through. It is sacred ground. It is the anteroom of creation. And Neville taught that whatever scene you plant there, whatever short scene implying your wish already fulfilled, sinks in past argument and lodges itself in the deeper mind the way a seed lodges into soft-turned earth rather than hard, dry ground. This is the secret nobody told you about prayer in secret. And there is a verse Neville returned to for exactly this. Enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut the door, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. And Neville would ask you gently, do you think a wooden door was ever the point? The closet was never only a room down a hallway. It was always this inner state, this quiet, drowsy privacy of imagination, where no crowd, no doubt, no wide-awake reasoning is allowed to interfere. Shutting the door simply means closing your senses to the report of the world for a few honest minutes. And the Father who sees in secret is nothing other than your own imagination, working unseen beneath the surface of your ordinary day. Let me make this plain with an ordinary night. A woman comes home from a day that gave her every reason to feel small, a comment from a manager that stung more than it should have, a bill that arrived heavier than expected, a silence from someone she loves that she read as distance. She eats, she scrolls, she carries the weight of it through the evening the way most of us do, but at 10 o'clock she lies down. And instead of replaying the sting of the day, she waits. She lets her body grow heavy. She lets her breathing slow. She stops gripping the day the way you'd finally set down a bag you have carried for miles. And somewhere in that loosening, just before the room disappears, she feels for the doorway. And she does not find it by trying harder. She finds it by trying less. That is the part almost nobody tells you. The state akin to sleep cannot be forced open by clenched effort. It opens the way a fist opens, only when you stop making it a fist. And a man across town, lying awake with his own version of the same day, makes the opposite mistake. He grips his want, the way you'd grip a steering wheel in traffic, jaw tight, mind racing through every reason it has not happened yet. And he wonders in the morning why nothing moved, not understanding that he never actually reached the doorway at all. He simply lay tense in the hallway outside it all night long, thinking he had prayed when he had only worried lying down. Second, Consider what you actually do once you are standing in that doorway. You do not recite a list of wants there. You do not beg. You do not argue your case the way you might to a manager or a judge. You construct one small scene, brief, natural, the kind of scene that would happen quite naturally if the wish were already true. This woman does not lie there chanting about abundance in the abstract. She feels the specific weight of an envelope already opened and already good news inside it. She hears a particular voice saying the particular words she has been longing to hear. She feels the exact relief in her own chest that would be there if the account were already settled, if the relationship were already easy, if the manager already respected her. She enters that little scene as though her body were actually standing inside it, not watching it from a distance the way you'd watch a memory, but living it from within the way you live this very moment right now. She feels the temperature of the room in the scene, the texture of it under her hands, the small, ordinary weight of a cup or a doorknob or a letter, because it is the smallness that convinces the deeper mind. Grand, elaborate visions tend to announce themselves as fantasy, but one plain, modest sensory detail, held quietly, slips past the guard at the door, and then, and this matters more than people realize, she lets it go. She does not repeat it 40 times in anxious effort. One sincere entry, felt deeply, in that loose, drowsy state, plants deeper than 100 tense repetitions rehearsed in the harsh light of noon. So pause for a moment right now, and pick one real desire you have been carrying, something specific, not vague, not a general wish for things to improve, but one particular scene that would only exist if the wish were already fulfilled. Construct it now in outline, so that tonight you already know the door you are walking through. Hold it gently. Feel it once here in this ordinary moment. Notice how even in daylight it changes something in your chest, and then release it the way you'd release a held breath. Third, consider why this works when willpower alone never could. Your waking hours are crowded with the census taker's report, the world as it currently appears, the bill, the glance, the headline, the silence you misread. And it is almost impossible in that noise to feel a new assumption as true, because the wide-awake mind keeps producing evidence for the old one. But drowsiness silences the census taker. In that soft threshold state you are closer to pure I am, closer to the naked awareness of being that existed before you ever identified with your name, your body, your history, your problems. Neville taught that I am is the deepest name of God operating in you, and that every state you inhabit, every mood, every identity, every circumstance you call yours, is simply a room that the I am has wandered into and, forgetting itself, mistaken for home, in the state akin to sleep, the I am briefly remembers that it is not the room, it is the one who enters and leaves rooms at will. And from that remembering, a new room can be chosen on purpose. This is why Neville insisted. You are not your state. You are the one experiencing the state. And the state akin to sleep is where that truth stops being a nice idea and becomes a felt fact. You are not the tired employee. You are not the anxious mother. You are not the man rehearsing rejection at 3 in the afternoon. You are the I am that has been trying on those rooms the way a hand tries on a series of gloves, none of which were ever the hand itself. Do this tonight. Do not force it. Simply lie down as you normally would. Let your body go heavy and loose. Let your thoughts slow the way honey slows in a cold jar. And when you feel that drowsy hush arrive, enter your one small scene, feel it as real, and let sleep take you from there, night after night. This single quiet practice will move you further than years of gritted teeth striving ever could, because you are no longer trying to force the world to change. You are simply allowing the I am within you to remember what room it actually wants to wake up in. I rest in I am, and from that rest my world is remade. The sixth key is this. Persistence in the assumption is what turns a private feeling into a public fact. Neville Goddard taught that the world you desire will often test you before it delivers itself to you, not because it is cruel, but because it is honest. It wants to know if you actually mean what you have been assuming. Or if you were only trying it on for a day the way you'd try on a coat in a shop, and hand it back before the door has even closed behind you. So between the moment you assume the wish fulfilled and the moment it hardens into a fact you can touch, there is very often a stretch that looks, to the untrained eye, exactly like nothing is happening. The old conditions linger a little longer. An old worry tries to visit again at 3 in the afternoon, and this is precisely the moment most people quit. 1 day short, 1 week short, they release the very assumption that was already working, and mistake the silence of incubation for the silence of failure. Picture a woman who has decided, quietly and sincerely, that a certain door is opening for her. On Monday she feels light. On Tuesday she feels almost certain, but by Wednesday an old familiar email arrives, with the old familiar disappointment attached to a different matter entirely, and something in her whispers, "See, nothing has changed," and she is tempted right there to hand the assumption back, like a coat that never fit. But Neville would ask her gently, whose voice was that? Was it truth speaking? Or was it only the old state, frightened of losing its tenant, making one last appeal for her attention? The secret nobody told you about persistence is that it is soft, not hard. But Neville taught that a seed planted in soil does not announce its growth by pushing up through the ground the next morning. It works first in the dark, unseen, doing its quiet business beneath a surface that looks, for a while, exactly as it looked before anything was ever planted there at all. And the gardener who trusts the process does not dig the seed up daily to check on it. The gardener waters and walks away and returns. So let your assumption be like that seed. Plant it once, sincerely, in that quiet, drowsy inner room, and then walk away from the digging. When the old doubt visits at 3 in the afternoon, do not argue with it. Do not build a case against it. Simply return gently to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the way you'd return your gaze to someone you love, who just re-entered the room. No explanation needed. No argument won. Only the quiet turning back toward what you have already chosen. This gentle returning, again and again, without strain, without drama, is what persistence actually looks like. It is not clenched. It is not gritted. It is faithful. And faithful is a much softer word than most people expect it to be. Faithful looks like a woman who waters a seed she cannot yet see and speaks kindly to herself. On Wednesday afternoon, instead of surrendering the whole garden, I remain in the assumption gently until the gentle becomes the given. Here is the whole picture. Seeing is not believing. Believing is seeing. That was the first turn of the key. Feeling is the secret, not the words but the wordless feeling underneath them. That was the second turn. Everyone you meet is you pushed out, a mirror wearing a stranger's face. That was the third turn. Revision tidies the house of the mind so tomorrow can rise clean. That was the fourth turn. The state akin to sleep is the secret closet where the seed goes in deepest. That was the fifth and heaviest turn, and persistence is simply refusing to dig up what you have only just planted. That was the sixth. But notice, these were never 6 separate keys. They were 6 turns of a single key, and that one key is this. You live, move, and have your being inside imagination, and imagination answers only to feeling, not to effort, not to pleading, not to watching. To feeling, the secret nobody told you plainly is that the outer world is not withholding your good and waiting to be convinced. The outer world is a faithful servant that can only echo the state you are already secretly assuming. So the whole labor is not to change the world, the whole labor is to change the assumption, and let the world, which has never once disobeyed you, simply catch up. So before you close this and step back into your day, let it settle once more. I am the one my heart has been waiting for. I am already home in the wish fulfilled. Imagination creates my reality. That is the law of assumption secret nobody told you, and now that you know it, no one can ever again convince you to wait for evidence before you believe.